Welcome to Beyond the Lab, a series by the Office of Career Development within the Biomedical Research, Education, and Training Department of the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. I'm excited today to welcome Jeremy Richman back to campus. He completed his postdoctoral fellowship in 2000 in the pharmacology department. So welcome back. We're glad to have you. So tell me a little bit about what you did here at Vanderbilt.
Well, I did my postdoc in the lab of Lee Limbird, and it was a really exciting time and environment, and I hope things haven't changed a whole lot. I looked at the micro environment within a synapse where cells communicate with each other and how proteins could be recruited to the area and held in that area to coordinate signaling effectively. And as exciting as that sounds, it was an awesome time, and I got a lot of great education. I think working here, and it really carved out kind of a vision beyond the academic study of what I was doing per se. I think it was a really great environment to learn how to be a scientist and to create a vision of what I wanted out of life.
Very nice. So tell me about the path when you left Vanderbilt. What happened after that?
Surprise to me, and maybe not to my mentor Lee, but I went into, instead of academics, which I thought I was always going to go into academics, I ended up exploring the opportunities in biotech arena, and of all places, I ended up going to Arena Pharmaceuticals when they were really small and a tiny company in Southern California, in San Diego, and there I was hired in their neuroscience department, and it was a really great opportunity. I enjoyed working there a lot. That was my first exposure to the actual drug discovery process, which you can be an expert in pharmacology, but you're not going to necessarily understand the process until you're in it and you understand what the pipeline looks like and why it looks like that. And I really enjoyed that. It was a really fun way of working. It was really rewarding. And then because of the environment that I worked in and being at biotech, you wear a lot of hats. There is nobody there's no group or department that's sort of set to do one thing. You oftentimes in these environments, you kind of just take off your receptor target enablement hat and you put on your safety pharmacology hat and you take that one off and put on the toxicology one, and then you put on the clinical one. And so I got a lot of experience with the whole pipeline.
Yeah.
And also was really fortunate. I mean, you can't pretend it's anything other than just damn luck. I got onto some projects that really panned out, and that spanned the whole range from CNS to obesity, diobesity, atherosclerosis, thrombosis. And so I got a lot of experience in the whole spectrum of the pipeline, and that afforded me a lot of opportunities to go other places if I wanted to. And I was recruited to a big pharma company called Boehringer Ingelheim, which is located throughout the world, but they recruited me to New England in Western Connecticut. And I worked there for a while in a new role that they had created called a research project leader. And they wanted people that had experience from bench to bedside and that understood the pipeline process really well and could speak the science, but also create a vision, build timelines, and mitigate risk and keep the upper management abreast of what those risks were and the timelines that were appropriate. And so that was fun, and it was a great job. And since then, for very tragic reasons, I've left the drug discovery arena, and now I work in the nonprofit world, running my own nonprofit called the AVL Foundation, named in honor and to create a legacy in honor of my daughter, who is one of the 6-year-olds that was murdered in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings on December 14th of 2012. And I've now got the experience of sort of creating a small business,
Right.
which a lot of people forget that you have to create a business to have a nonprofit. Right. So we have a small business, the AVL Foundation, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit. I am the CEO and currently only employee, but that's only for for the short term and the long term, we have grand visions. We have a simple mission, and that is to prevent violence and build compassion through neuroscience research, community engagement, and education.
So you had a lot to learn, starting from, nothing to now a nonprofit. So there was a lot of things that you had to jump into to do. What are some of the things that you had to learn about starting your own foundation? What were some of those beginning things that you might not have necessarily been equipped when you first started?
Yeah, pretty much everything. So first and foremost, it didn't really dawn on me that when you're going to champion a cause, you have to build a business. So we had to incorporate. I didn't know what that even meant. Why does everybody incorporate in Delaware? I couldn't tell you at the time, and now I understand what that means to incorporate, to create a business. You have to create a business plan. You have to create a business structure. You have to have a short-term and a long-term vision and goals. You have to create a board of directors. Different states have different laws for what comprises a board. Mm-hmm. You have to write bylaws. That's not just a simple, hey, everybody's going to show up on a Friday, drink a few beers, and we're going to get together and talk about the company. No, it's like a very detailed rule book that you have to play by, and different states have different requirements for the bylaws, and so we had to understand what Delaware's bylaw and board of director requirements were. And that was just to establish ourselves as a business, as a corporation. And then from there, we had to learn how to file for nonprofit status, what that meant, who do you file to, what are the forms. These are not straightforward forms. Becoming a nonprofit is really arduous. The IRS is not easy to work with, surprise. And the process takes a long time. But they make exceptions, which is really fortunate, and we're really lucky that they do. And some of the exceptions are if the nature of the nonprofit work you want to do is contemporaneous, meaning there's a time tag associated with it, then they can rush things. If there's donations to the foundation or to the entity that's going to be a nonprofit that would depend on nonprofit status, then they'll rush it. And we met all of their requirements, and so they expedited the review and approved it really rapidly in record time. And so from the inception of our mission, our scope, our vision, to forming a board, incorporating and receiving our 501c3 nonprofit status was about 6 months, which was a huge whirlwind. It was fortunate since I wasn't sleeping much at the time. Anyway, I had a lot to do with my time, and so we got off the ground running and started acting on our mission, and so yes, it was an incredible learning process and still remains that. And the beauties of life are finding those opportunities to grow and learn.
Yeah. So, what does your daily life look like? Like, what are some of the activities that you do on a normal Monday or Tuesday?
Every day I get up with my 1-year-old and we hang out, we play, we read, we get breakfast and coffee, and then I just drink juice, but she gets the coffee.
Got it.
And then we hang out, and then either my wife comes down, and we were both fortunate that we work from home, and we also have a nanny that comes in. And so Natalie shows up, and Imogen plays with her, and Jen goes to work in her office downstairs, and I go to my office upstairs. And most of my day is spent in 4 ways. Of course, everybody's first thing that you do, which is like I only allow myself this on a couple of days, is to look at my email, because as soon as you look at your email, you're stuck. So the first thing I do is I try to read a paper, a scientific paper, or maybe finish a book that that I'm close to finishing, or start a book that I was committed to starting. And so I'll read for a while every morning, then I'll check my email. I have a lot of meetings virtually. Every day, just about, I have a virtual meeting where I'm talking to somebody over the phone or through a Google Hangout or a Skype chat or what have you, a teleconference. And a lot of days I'll meet somebody in town because I think it's really important just to get out of the house because it is great that you can work from home, but you also go crazy. So a lot of meetings that I have, I meet people on like running trails and we'll go for a running meeting or we'll go for a lunch meeting. And we talk about everything from the science of violence and the brain to nonprofit development, to business development, to educational strategies and philosophies and such, because that's a critical part of our mission. Then most afternoons, one of our interns will either call me and I'll have a virtual meeting, or we'll come over to the house and we'll work on whatever their interests have been. And they all have sort of outlined projects and kind of help them on that. If they need a lot of help, otherwise they just sit at their desk and we have a desk up in the attic and they'll just work there, or we'll just touch base over the phone and just say, what can I do for you how's the progress going? A lot of them are writing articles or creating videos. So that's my day. It's really fun. It's always a new adventure, and very rarely do I feel like I'm doing the same thing all the time.
Good. So you worked both in pharma and now in foundation. What are some of the things about each that were a good fit for you? Because I know they're very different industries.
The most important, I think, aspect of life is to continually grow, and I think there's lots of ways that you can grow. I think the most important one is through friendships and in connection to people, and there's specific kind of connections that you can have with people. Probably in any work environment. If you're working in an area that you're passionate about and that's where your interests lie, then that's great. If it's not, then I suggest you change because you should always follow your passions. But I've been fortunate. I love science. I love discovery. I love learning, and I love the people that you meet when you work in that environment. And so, where are we going with the question again?
How are both pharma and foundations good fit for you?
Yeah. So pharma and foundations are good for me because the people in those arenas are like-minded. They want to grow. They want to learn. They want to discover. And the discovery process is what really excites me. And going through the discovery process with somebody else is really fun. It's one of the most rewarding things in life. And discovery is... come on, everybody likes that from childhood throughout your whole life. Everybody likes an adventure, right? Yeah. And science is the greatest adventure. And so the pharma discovery process is no different than the nature of our nonprofit, which is research-based. And I really love being in a position where I can direct money to go into that discovery process, and I can talk to the real pioneers, the best in the world at it. So they're the same in the sense, pharma and the nonprofit world are the same in the sense that you have these common people coming together to geek out on discovery, and I like that to the core. They're different in the sense of what motivates them. I mean, at the end of the day, pharma is in the business of making money. Right. And if they do that by decreasing suffering and helping people's lives, that's great. And so there's nothing wrong with profit. In the nonprofit world, there is no profit, and what you're benefiting isn't financial; it's philosophical, spiritual, and that's a lot more rewarding to me.
Great. So there are students and postdocs here that are interested in working in the nonprofit industry. What kind of skills do you think they need, or what are some of the activities that they need to do now in order to prepare them for that industry?
If you want to move into the nonprofit industry, there's a couple things you need to be prepared for. One is a lower salary.
Okay.
And if that's not what motivates you, great, because there's two kinds of people in the world, those that want to do something and those that want to be somebody. If you're the kind of person that wants to do something, a nonprofit arena is perfect for you because that's what it's geared to do. also be prepared for you got to be a fighter. You got to be prepared to get knocked on your butt, get back up, put your dukes up, and get knocked down again. But I would argue that if you are in the research arena already, this will come as completely no surprise, and you'll say, "Yeah, of course, isn't that how life is?" I mean, if everything worked the first time, they just call it search. But we're used to being wrong 9 out of 10 times, and that 1 in 10 really fills us up. And the nonprofit world's really the same. You're going to be asking for a lot, and it's different than being sort of just a salesperson in the generic sense, because hopefully you believe in what you're selling and you're passionate about it, so it's not a hard sell. But you do have to be prepared for people challenging you, disagreeing with you. But again, if you're coming from the academic arena, that's nothing new either. Sure. So it's really not a whole lot different. The largest difference is when you're new this is actually very similar too. When you're new in academics, your whole life is filled with, how do I get funding? How do I get funding? How do I get funding? But once you're established, you're good to go, and you can relax and really sink your teeth into your mission or your hypotheses or your research efforts. And the nonprofit arena is just like that too. I'm all completely worried, how do we become sustainable? How do we move beyond the grassroots generous donor base that we have and get to a real endowed philanthropic giant that we want to be, so that we can fund impactful, meaningful research. We can create real internship incentives to get people to move into the brain health arena. How do I get paid a salary that will sustain a household without the risk of turning the lights off? That's a fear that you have in the academic arena when you're new, and that's the fear that we have right now.
Okay. So I'm sure you do a lot of networking. What does that look like for you? What are your networking secrets that are your individualized approach?
Whether you're going to stay in biotech, big pharma, academics, or if you move into the nonprofit world, being able to communicate is really key. It's key to life in general. But being able to communicate in these areas is key for 2 reasons. One, you need to be able to take very complex, heady information and break it down to the everyday person, mostly because they paid for it and they earned it, and you owe it to them quite literally, whether you're in the nonprofit arena, whether you're in industry, if you're a publicly traded company, or if you are in academics. They're paying for the research. You owe it to them. They bought it. Give it to them in a way that they understand it. So that's networking, but it's really communication and education. What you mean is building friendships, collaborations, relationships with people in other areas. Obviously, that's really critical for the progress of science, because you need to share knowledge. That's how we evolve as a species, and that's how we evolve scientifically, is that sharing of knowledge. And that's really critical to network. Finding a job, you obviously have to network as well, because right now in this competitive age that we're in, academically or in industry, and most certainly in the nonprofit world, there are 30 applications, 40, 50, maybe 100 applications for the position that you're looking for. And the higher you go in sort of on a ladder, so to speak, the fewer opportunities there are and the more applicants there are. And there's no question, you got to be really well qualified, well spoken. You have to understand what you're talking about. But probably more important than that, you got to know somebody that can get that application onto the top of the pile and hand it around and say, I know this person, she's awesome, give her a chance, bring her in, she gives a great talk, she really knows what she's talking about. Without that, it's going to be really tough. So there's lots of ways to do that. I mean, everywhere I go, people joke about it, but I mean, I'll meet somebody in the line at Starbucks and I'll become their best friend. And everywhere you go, there's an opportunity to meet somebody new, create a relationship, learn their story, and that only benefits you and that person and anybody related to that. When you get in just underneath the surface, you can see what they're about. When it comes to the academic science arena or biotech, big pharma, wherever it is, in the science arena, you need to build these relationships so that they trust you, they know what you're talking about. You can learn from them, they can learn from you, but you build this relationship so that you can do each other favors and get each other exposure through giving a talk, successful publications, collaborations, and opportunities for jobs as well. No question that's been really critical in my lifetime, and it's really critical now in the nonprofit arena. You have to build relationships and trust, and that requires a lot of certainly nothing superficial. You have to get in and listen to somebody, understand what they're about, and get a connection with them.
Great. Well, we're so glad to have you back. Thanks for coming and talking to us.
My honor and pleasure. Thank you.